5. So thank you for your kind patience. dignitaries, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to this event today. As you are all aware that India is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to commemorate the 75 years of achieving our independence. So as part of the celebrations, we have arranged a talk today by none other than Dr. M.D. Patra sir, our DG sir. So without much further ado, I would like to request Dr. H.N. Panda, Regional Director, Reserve Bank of Bhubaneswar, to come and give his welcome remarks. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Reserve Bank of India, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to this event today. As we celebrate 75 years of our independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, I also extend our warm greetings to you all on this historic moment. Over these years, we have braved myriad challenges and stand tall today to aspire for a $5 trillion economy. As our aspirations grow, there will be new expectations. There will be more unforeseen challenges in fulfilling the same, but there will also be more opportunities coming our way. On this momentous occasion of completing 75 years of our independence, let us sit back and direct our thoughts and vision towards building a more prosperous and resilient India, the India of our dreams. There is this beautiful rain-soaked morning out there, and the Mother Earth, embellished with luscious greenery, tempting us to feast our eyes. Inside here, we have the promise of ideas and thoughts that our minds could relish for a long time. Speaking today is Dr. Debabrata Patra, Deputy Governor in Reserve Bank of India. Dr. Patra is widely known and needs no introduction, but still, for the sake of order, let me outline a very brief introduction of Dr. Patra. Michael Debabrata Patra, a career central banker, is the Deputy Governor responsible for monetary policy, financial markets, deposit insurance, research and statistics, international relations, and corporate strategy of the Reserve Bank of India. He is a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank, which is invested with the responsibility of monetary policy decision-making in India. He has served in the International Monetary Fund as a Senior Advisor to Executive Director India during December 2008 to June 2012. He has published a book and several papers in the areas of inflation, monetary policy, international trade and finance, including exchange rates and the balance of payments. A fellow of the Harvard University, where postdoctoral research, he has a PhD in economics from the Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai. So, ladies and gentlemen, I invite all of you to pull yourselves indoors for a short while and immerse yourselves in this train of thoughts that is India at 75. Please welcome Dr. Michael D. Patra.
Dr. Rudanand Panda, Regional Director, Reserve Bank of India, RBI henceforth, Bhubaneswar, distinguished guests of the RBI from the Government of Odisha, academia, banks, financial institutions, industry associations, the media, scholars and students, my colleagues from the RBI, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very deeply honored to be invited to deliver this address as part of the celebrations for the 75th year of our independence. I thank Dr. Panda for inviting me, and more than that, for the innovative drive and the gracious hospitality he and his team, which has made this event possible. At this defining moment, the elixir of energy, inspiration, new ideas and pledges awakens us to a bright and self-reliant future marked by the fulfillment of our dreams, of which Dr. Panda spoke so evocatively. Thank you for that. In many ways, Bhubaneswar is the embodiment of this Mahotsav, a rich and glorious heritage, a happening present, and a smart city of the future. In every respect, Tribhuvan. While my talk will attempt to kaleidoscope India's journey through the last 75 years, the focus is really not on the past, it's on the future. India in the next 10 to 50 years. I propose to anchor my talk with a PowerPoint presentation, and the text of my speech will be available on the RBI's website. So my suggestion is just sit back, fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the show. It is said that there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. This is attributed to Victor Hugo, for those who are literally inclined. I do believe that with all the strength of my conviction that India's time has come. And that is the theme of my address today. As the famous song marking the UN's International Day of Peace goes, and this song is by John Lennon, one of the Beatles, you may say that I'm a dreamer, but I hope after my talk, I will not be the only one. You too will dream with me, and the world will be one. So I invite you to join me in this journey of dreams as India takes off to make its tryst with its destiny. So what I'm going to do is, to start with, I'm going to simulate India's takeoff. That is the clip of a MiG-29 MK, the naval variant, which is taking off from Vikramaditya. So let's move on. It is said that if the history of the whole universe can be likened to a journey of 100 kilometers, then it will not be till the 71st or 72nd kilometer that one will encounter life as we know it. And the whole of human existence is just the last 1 or 2 meters. So seen against this humbling perspective, my view is that independent India's journey of 75 years has been astonishing. Between 2006 and just before the pandemic struck, India lifted 300 million people out of poverty, the highest poverty reduction rate anywhere in the world. The Indian economy is a world leader in the production of various agricultural commodities. To give you an example, in 2021, India became the world's largest rice exporter. And the total exports of India's rice are more than the combined total of world number 2 and world number 3. In fact, in a market of 50 million tons, India's exports of 19 million tons depressed international rice prices so much that world number 3, Vietnam, is now importing from India. India has one of the widest manufacturing bases in the world, ranging from the largest producer of tractors and two-wheelers to one of the top 10 exporters of smartphones, cars, and spacecraft. In several services, including shipping personnel and IT, India is a world leader once again. In the case of IT, India is known as the back office of the world. A widely used indicator of economic progress is gross domestic product, which is nothing but the value of the final goods and services that a country produces, say in a quarter or a year. So that blue line that came up on the screen is the way GDP of India has moved over 75 years since independence. You can see it's a very jagged kind of line. So if one was to apply what are called statistical structural break tests, those who are statistically inclined will know what I'm talking about. They're called the biparent structural break tests. You will see that there are actually three phases in India's progress. The first phase was up to the 70s. Growth rate averaged 3.6%, the so-called Hindu rate of growth, which has been associated with inward-looking policies, which we adopted during that period. The next stage is from 1980 to 2001, and this is the time when India opened up a bit, liberalized, and started to look outwards. And the growth rate rose from 3.6 to 5.5%. The third phase starts from 2002, right up to the pandemic, when India averaged 7% until the pandemic struck. The pandemic took us down 6.6%, and only in 21-22, it has recovered to 8.7%, but that 8.7% takes the GDP level only 1.5% above pre-pandemic level, that is above 2019-20 level. And I'll speak on that at length. For 22-23, this is the current financial year, the RBI has projected India's growth to be 7.2%. With this growth, in this year, India will be one of the fastest growing economies of the world. What are the drivers of this growth? It turns out that it is we, the people of India. If you see that green part that is on the bottom half of the screen, that is private consumption, meaning what average households spend on their daily livelihood, or everything that goes into their daily livelihood. That is 55% of India's GDP. It was actually 75% until the 70s. So it's us who are driving India's growth. You will see that there are those red and yellow lines. The red portions are investment. What businesses do, create factories, create machinery and equipment that produce other goods. But you can see that that is not very sustained. Yet, investment has given us turning points in the whole growth process. Likewise, the yellow parts are, the grey parts are exports. Similar kind of story. Not very sustained, but giving turning points. The investment part of the story, that what businesses do to create capacity to produce more, is actually the game changer as far as India is concerned. It is also true for all developing countries which are scarce in capital. So the investment rate is widely regarded as the most important lever of growth in India. So that's the investment rate that came up. You can see that it goes up to a point in 2005, which was the highest point, and then it started to decline. But the noteworthy thing about the investment is that it is almost entirely domestically financed. The country's savings finance the investment rate. So it moves very closely with investment. Two other things to be noticed is that the saving rate has started to fall People are saving less from 2007-8 onwards. And eventually this caused the investment rate to fall from 2010-11. And to my mind, reviving the investment rate is the most critical thing that we need today. I mentioned that India is almost entirely home financed, almost entirely, but foreign savings, foreign flows from abroad have a marginal supplemental role to play. And what do I mean by foreign savings? That is explained in the right side of the chart. The current account balance, that is the balance between exports and imports, decides how much foreign savings will come into this country and how much will be used for growth. Through exports, we earn foreign exchange and we pay foreign exchange for imports. For a country like India, typically imports are higher than exports because we need things we don't produce like crude oil, crude petroleum, and we also need things which others produce better than us like machinery and transport, technology, which might be closely held. So since our exports cannot pay for our imports entirely, we have to borrow from abroad and pay for the imports. But borrowing from abroad involves principal and interest repayments. If principal and interest payments become higher than our earnings, then there are only two things we can do: either cut the imports, so grow slower, or don't pay your debt and get into international isolation. In fact, the experience is that India can tolerate a current account deficit or capital inflow from abroad of 2.5 to 3% of its GDP. A telling reminder of this fact came in 2013 when, because of high petroleum prices and high gold imports, something happening to the screen. So because of this, the current account deficit went to 6% of GDP. At that time, the chairman of the US Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, just announced that why don't we just tighten money supply in the US? They were coming out of the crisis. Just that talk started what is called the taper tantrum, and India suffered the worst exchange rate depreciation in the world among countries of its size, and it came to be known as one of the fragile five. The others in the fragile five were Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa, and Turkey. So foreign savings is a double-edged sword. Stepping back a little, it's useful to observe India's progress in a cross-country setting. It's always good to see how we are doing vis-a-vis the rest of the world. So I'm going to show you a slide which will talk for itself, but it will show you how the top 10 countries of the world have moved in the last 40-50 years. In the 60s, right up to the 90s, it was the age of Japan. And you can see the ascent of Japan is really remarkable. It's growing actually, it's growing as we speak. So China appears on the screen. Now starts the age of China. And look at its remarkable ascent. India appears on the screen, but still lagging behind. Now starts the age of India, and look at India's ascent. So today India is the 6th largest economy in the world, but measured by market exchange rates. So what does one do here? You take the GDP of a country divided by the rupee dollar rate, and you get the dollar GDP, and you compare it across countries. For the year 2022, the International Monetary Fund has projected that world GDP, world growth, will be, so you see those numbers there, it's going to be 3.2%. The world will grow at 3.2% in 2022 and will slow down to 2.9% in 23. That is how the big countries that you saw on that moving slide will contribute to the world growth. It turns out that in spite of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, India will constitute about 14% of global growth. And at that level, it will be the second largest driver of world GDP in 22. The use of market exchange rates, like I explained to you, has been questioned because exchange rates are subject to market volatility and idiosyncratic behavior. And this causes the GDP that you divided by to diverge from reality. So an alternative measure is what is called purchasing power parity. That is the price of an average basket of goods and services that one needs, a household needs for its livelihood. Let us say that average baskets cost 50 rupees in India and $1 in the United States, so the parity is $1 to 50 rupees. That's the one. Okay. So if we start measuring not in market exchange rates, but in purchasing power parity, sorry about this. Murphy always strikes. There. So you can see that India is actually the third largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity, just behind China and the United States. A good way of explaining purchasing power parity is the McDonald's burger. It's said that the burger has the same amount of potatoes or wheat in every McDonald's outlet in every country in the world. So to tell you how it works, you pay $5.80 for a Big Mac in the United States. For that amount of money, you can buy 2.5 Big Macs in India. That is purchasing power parity. Of course, we don't have a Big Mac, we have a Maharaja Mac, but you know, that's the parity. So, if you work in purchasing power parity terms, India has a share of 7% of global GDP, China has 18%, and the US 16%. So let's just take this idea and move forward. And this slide I would like you to park in your thoughts because I will come back to this at the close of my presentation. So if this is work done in the OECD and the World Bank, that if on purchasing power parity terms, the growth rates of the major economies of the world are projected. Sorry, I think I'll wait for this because it's an important point here. So there are these two dotted lines that I need you to focus on. The first dotted line is in 2027, when India will become a 5 trillion economy. A much talked about 5 trillion is going to happen in 2027. And the second line is in 2048, when India will overtake the United States, believe it or not. This is projection not made by me, but by international bodies. Okay, so by 2048, India will be the second largest economy of the world, just behind China. Now, typically, these the prosperity of a country and its productivity gets reflected in the exchange rate. So, if this was to be translated to exchange rates, Indonesia will be the strongest currency in the world as we move out of the 30s. And India will be the second strongest. The Indian rupee, the green line, will be the second strongest in the world. So with this bird's eye image of India's, where India is today, now let me turn to the future. And I will take 4 engines that will power India's takeoff. These 4 engines will enable India to achieve escape velocity from the emerging market orbit and become a superpower, economic superpower. So the first one I will talk about is the underlying realities of what we call the demographic dividend. The world's population has fallen below 1% in terms of growth. It's fallen below 1% for the first time in 2021. From here onwards, it will start to slow through the rest of this century. The world population is slowing down. India's population at 1.38 billion is the world's youngest population. The average age of India is 28 years. By 2023, that is next year, India will be overtaking China, and it will be the most populous country in the world with a population of 1.43 billion. Look at the last part of the slide, and that tells you the time that every country enjoys the demographic dividend because of youth. You can see Japan started in 1964, but that dividend closed in 2004. Likewise, Italy started in 84, but 2002 was the end of the dividend. Likewise, for India, however, it started in 2018 and will go on till 2055 in the last part of the screen. So that is our demographic dividend. It's this limited window we have to exploit. We have to go back. What are the underlying factors behind this? Look at this side of the screen. That red line that is going down is what is called the total fertility rate. It is the average number of children a woman can bear during her lifetime. As per the findings of the National Family Health Survey conducted during 2019 to 21, the total fertility rate in India, that is the average number of children an Indian woman bears, is now 2.0. According to the United Nations, the total fertility rate should be 2.1 for the population to replace itself every year. That is, the population grows. So India has fallen below. So after a while, India's population will start to fall. I'm saying this because you need to understand the demographic dividend with the realities that also constrain it. Okay, so if you see the middle part of the slide, that red line is India. And what is that? It is the working age population, meaning people in the age bracket 15 to 64 who can go to work, earn income, and also save. For all other countries, major countries, that working age population is falling actually. They're all aging. Their populations are growing older. But for India, we will continue to get an increase in working age population up to the year 2045. And then we fall. So making the best of this demographic dividend is the way to go. Second engine of growth is manufacturing. India's experience over the last 75 years is actually considered quite remarkable because it defied economic theories of growth. Economic theories of growth say that a country goes from primary sector, which is agriculture, logging, forestry, etc., to secondary, which is manufacturing, electricity generation, etc., and then to tertiary, which is services. But India is a unique example of a country which actually leapfrogged from primary to to tertiary. Okay, so services account for 2/3 of our economy today. And this at one time was heralded as a miracle. But in hindsight today, India's experience may not have been the miracle it was credited to be. Because we failed to absorb into gainful employment those people who migrated from agriculture who were less skilled. And manufacturing was the best way in which we could have absorbed them. Okay. And apart from this labor absorptive capacity, manufacturing also has backward and forward linkages with other sectors of the economy. Hence, perhaps it is necessary to revisit that conventional wisdom of the development experience and catch up with other leading manufacturers of the world. According to the World Bank, India's manufacturing sector is only, you can see it's only 13% of its GDP, of its total income, which is among the lowest in the world. If you see the growth of manufacturing in India, that's the green haphazard line that came on the right side of the screen, we have actually been very volatile in our manufacturing profile. It has ranged from 17% in 2006 to minus 3.2% in 79-80. So you don't get a very clear picture of how India is doing. But what you can do is you can smooth that line using what is called moving averages, and you get something like that blue line. When you get that, then you realize that if you take that whole line and measure what was the average growth rate of India in manufacturing, it was 7 to 7.5%. I just took that blue line, which was smooth, so that it gives a better picture. That light blue line is the share of manufacturing in India's income. Okay. So remember I told you that India has been growing at roughly 7 to 7.5 over the last 20 years. If it grows at 7.5, that is the current rate, then our share in manufacturing will go up to 20%. But if we manage to grow at 10%, and I'm not saying something out of the outlandish, because 10% is what is the theme of Make in India campaign. If we manage to grow at 10%, we will raise our share to 25%, and we will be a manufacturing powerhouse. It's that close. India will be the shop floor of the world besides being the back office. To achieve this, we need three things. One is India needs to adapt to the Industrial Revolution 4.0. And what does that mean? It means automation, data exchange, cyber-physical systems, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, cognitive computing, the smart factory, and advanced robotics. Remember that the first industrial revolution occurred during 1760 to 1900, and it was driven by coal, steam engines, and trains. The second revolution occurred between 1870 to 1940, and it was driven by oil, crude oil, electricity, internal combustion engines, and cars. The third revolution occurred between 1930 to 2000 and was based on nuclear energy, natural gas, computers, robots, and planes. So the drivers are changing, and India needs to be on top of this. The third engine of growth is exports. Exports actually provide an avenue for the expression of productivity, expression of production capacity beyond national borders. In that sense, it widens the market for India's goods and services. Today, India exports $800 billion worth of goods and services taken together, and its share is only 2.7%. The government of India has set a target of $1 trillion of exports of goods and services by 2030. If we achieve that, and I will show you soon that it is achievable, then our share will go to 5% of world exports, and we will be a leading exporter to the world. 2.7 to 5. How do we plan to do this? There are already schemes in place, like one district, one product, which is what is called districts as export hubs. Recently, the governor actually brought this to my notice. There is a TV show called Indian Idol. And there was a Bengali girl who was about to perform, and she was asked, is it true that rasgullas come from Bengal? So she said, yes, where else? Only Bengalis know how to make rasgullas and all that. 2-3 days later, there was an Oriya girl who was to perform, and she was asked the same question. She said, rasgullas come from Orissa. They can't come from anywhere else. And rasgullas belong to Orissa. Jai Jagannath. So, that makes the story of the one district, one export reality. It is possible. The most common things are becoming exportable. The other RODTEP is all about remission of export duties, which do not figure in other schemes. Ubharti Sitare is about promoting MSME exports, and ROSCTL, which is for textile exports and garments, which are not covered under other schemes. Is it possible 5% of world exports? In fact, it is, because what we have done is we have mapped where can 5 trillion come from, 5%. So they are going to be global IT and digital services, which is already up on the screen, and the expected exports are also written, 285 billion. High value agriculture means processed agriculture. High value tourism, we already are a hub for medical tourism. Fintech, specialized financial services, e-governance, and retail and e-commerce. It's feasible, it's within reach, and we have plans to get there. The fourth engine. And that is internationalization. What do I mean by internationalization? We are already an internationalized people. There are more Indians living outside India than any other country in the world. You can see that on the screen. So as a result, India is the largest recipient of remittances, which means people earning abroad and sending home to their family. We get 90 billion a year, the latest number. So we are already international people. The Indian rupee trades 3 times more in London than in Mumbai. That's reality. Actually, I should include Singapore. And now there's so many centers. I believe that if you get down in any airport in Canada, you can get off and exchange your 50 rupees or 500 rupees. They only take these two currently. So we are already there. The historian Niall Ferguson, who writes prolifically, has written that in human history, the entire human history, there have been 70 empires. And empires have certain characteristics. The 69th empire is the People's Republic of China. 70th empire is the European Union. The 68th empire has all the attributes of an empire, but with one thing missing. It wages wars beyond its borders, but does not annex territory. If it annexes, it gives it back. That's the United States. So Niall Ferguson calls the United States the reluctant empire. So if I was to draw an analogy from Niall Ferguson, I would call India the reluctant internationalist. We are internationalized, but we don't want to recognize it. So, if you take the foreign exchange market and all the currencies that trade in it, take out the US dollar, take out the euro, whatever you have left constitutes 4.2% of total foreign exchange market turnover or activity. The Indian rupee has 0.9%. If we can just raise it to 4.2%, we'll be an international currency, just like the dollar or the euro. We hope that given the pace at which India's currency is internationalizing, we will be there by 2030. What does this mean? This means that the exchange rate can move not because of domestic factors, but because of international factors. So there is already a market there which is called the non-deliverable forward market, which opens before our markets. So in a historic step, the RBI has allowed its banks to engage in the NDF market. And today, the RBI intervenes in the NDF market to state its view on the currency. As you can see, despite every currency in the world going down in the face of the strong dollar, the Indian rupee is holding its own. It's one of the best performing currencies in the world, even beating the yen, the euro, and the pound sterling. So this is about where we were. Now let's go into the future and talk about what challenges confront us on the runway to take off. So the first one I will pick is COVID, the pandemic. Supply disruptions, the health crisis, and a huge mass migration when people thinking that COVID is an urban disease went away to villages only to find that the virus followed them there. This was India in the period of the first wave of the COVID and the lockdown. So India in that year fell by 6.6%. It declined by 6%, contracted. Actually, in the first quarter of that year, 2021, when the lockdown came into operation and the first wave struck, India's GDP declined by 24%. It was one of the steepest in the world. Only one country fell more steeply, that was Peru. And if you take out the stimulus that RBI and the government of India gave to protect India, if you take that out, then we would be falling more than Peru. So we were the worst affected country in the world due to the pandemic. The losses are yet to be counted, I would say. So let us say I take the GDP as it has been progressing. This is the level of the GDP from many years. And I just extend that line, freehand, to 21, 22. This is the way it would look. Now against this, if I juxtapose the actual experience, the decline of 6.6 and the rise back to 8.7, then that is the gap, that is the loss that India has gone through. Our experience is that it will take 10 years to get that output back, that livelihood back. Okay, so reclaiming that lost output is the first challenge that India faces. Second challenge, and I'm not saying that I'm making an exhaustive list, I'm just compressing the major challenges for want of time. I could actually go on into many other challenges. India's investment in infrastructure, which is roads, ports, airports, those kind of things, is the lowest in the world. We as a nation spend only $86 per person on infrastructure. You can see that. Yeah. That little red line is India. Little red bar. Among the lowest in the world. Now on the right hand side of the screen, those bars are, the green bars are what we want, what we need. And the blue bars are what we are. So the gap between the green and the blue bar is what is called the infrastructure gap. At the current time, infrastructure investment is growing at 3.5%. If we can raise this to 6% of GDP, we'll close the gap. If we close that gap, we will achieve a GDP level of $7.5 billion, which exactly corresponds to 5 trillion. So we will achieve it faster than 2027, which I showed you in the previous slide. What are the requirements? You need transparent and faster regulatory processes. What we call a one-stop shop, that an industrialist wanting to set up a factory gets all his permissions and licenses in one shot. Utilities, electricity, telephone, whatever. Many countries in the world do that actually. You need clear, transparent, and efficient land acquisition and climate change. You will be shocked to know how many infrastructure projects are stalled because of climate change restrictions, whether real or imagined. And you also need a viable infrastructure finance, because infrastructure projects take 20 years to come up and then further a few more years to give income streams. But building that world-class infrastructure is the third, I think, the second biggest challenge to India's takeoff. Let me turn to the third challenge, and that is a high-quality labor force to go with the rest of the economy. This chart shows you how countries contribute to their growth through labor. And the brown part is the labor quality, meaning skill. How much skill do you have? How much flexibility do you have to redeploy labor into various industries? For instance, at the current time, there is a high degree of obsolescence in IT. When in the past, it was enough to learn a language, let's say C++ or Java or whatever, and do some coding and all that. All those people are now driving Uber cars. Because that technology is not required anymore. So you need cloud computing, you need warehousing, you need data governance, etc. Big data. Unless you get those skills, you're not used anymore. So the important thing is that not only should India contribute with quantity of labor, but in quality terms. And this, the right-hand side slide will show you why. Of all the labor we produce, only 46% is employable, meaning in the right job with the right skill. The rest are not employable. So how are we going to handle this? This is a much more difficult problem than infrastructure. And keep in mind the fact that demographics are slowly getting worse and worse. We are going to slow down as an economy. We're going to produce less people. Our populations will reduce over time. So it looks like there is very little we can do about this. It's too inexorable. Actually, in the US and China, etc., this thing has begun. They can't do anything about it. But we can do something. That is, increase the rate of female participation in the workforce. You can see that we are one of the lowest in this regard. I think among 190 countries, we are 178. So we do need to improve this, and that's a way out of an otherwise inexorable process. So we need to create workplaces that do not stigmatize women at work, instead to encourage them to earn their livelihoods with dignity, with satisfaction. We need to spread awareness of social norms that favor working women. Things like what we recently learned in the pandemic, work from home. You can be actually more efficient working from home, but you are multitasking. You are attending to your family or your baby or whatever. We already did it. So here's one. Like, for instance, this metaverse, where your image, you will control your image. It will travel to office. Your boss sends his or her image. You take orders and go back to work. It's going to happen very soon. So we need to get our women into our workforce. Yes, he has to, because that will be the norm in the workplace. Work from anywhere, as they say. The fourth challenge is a greener, cleaner India. And this is a reality which is catching up very fast with us. At the conference of the parties 26, that is COP26 in Glasgow, not Paris, in November 2021, India made 5 commitments. The Panch Amrit, as it is called. And those are the 5 commitments India has made. They include attaining 500 gigawatts of non-fossil energy capacity by 2030. An energy mix which is at least 50% of renewables by 2030. Reducing total carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now till 2030. So you can see the next 10 years are going to be critical. And reducing the carbon intensity of our economy by less than 45% by 2030. And the last one is achieving net zero, meaning reducing greenhouse emissions to as close to zero as possible. But that will take time. It will take up to 2070. There is a non-profit policy research institution called the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. It is Asia's leading non-profit organization in this area. It estimates that India requires $10 trillion to make this transformation. Shift to renewable energy alone will take 8.4 trillion. Industry will require 1.5 trillion because it will stop using coal and it will probably ramp up hydrogen as an energy source. And the mobility sector, that is transportation, etc., will require 198 billion. So we know what we need, we know where we want to go, and we know where we are. That's as close as we are. And we're actually closer. You know, I told you that we need to produce 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. To do that, we have to grow our renewable energy, which is from the sun and the wind, at 14% per year. To go from 151, where we are today, gigawatts, to 500. But actually, we are doing even better than that. We are growing at 18%. Today, India is like booming in renewable energy. And we can easily beat this. So this is doable already. You know, if you, my teacher in the IIT used to tell me that if you have a problem, don't try to solve it together. Break it into 20 parts, solve one part at a time, and the whole problem will get solved. Maybe we need to do that. So India will require means to store this energy, because most of the solar energy is produced in the southern states, but it's not consumed right then. So we need to find a way to store it. It's possible. We have to minimize transmission and distribution losses. And we have to have a tariff structure which really reflects the cost of producing energy, not these cross subsidies that hurt some sections of people and benefit the others. And the most important, we need to find a solution for the legacy debt of our discoms. I am at the end of my presentation, so let me conclude. If you recall, I showed you a slide where India crosses the US in 2048 and stays second to China. I'm going to get that slide back. The same slide. Okay. The first dotted vertical line is when we achieve 5 trillion economy. And in 2048, we cross the United States and become the second largest economy in the world. Now let us say, just for the purpose of humoring me, that we managed to deal with these challenges. As I showed you, these challenges are all within reach, all solvable at this stage. It's not impossible at all. So if we manage to deal with these challenges and follow this path, then it is possible that in the next decade, we will grow at double digit, and we require just 11%. We are growing today at 8.7%, we need 11. If we do that, then this will be our growth path. What does that mean, this new growth path, that the green broken line that came up? You will not need to go to 2048 to surpass the United States. It will happen in 2031. And by 2060, India will surpass China and become the largest economy in the world. Remember that in this growth path, it is not 11% all through. It is 11% only up to 2030. After that, the growth rate falls to 4 to 5%. Still, the lift we have got in this decade will make us the largest economy in the world. As I said in my opening remarks, you may think that I am a dreamer. But let me remind you that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And this is not by me, it's by Mark Twain. The distinguished British economist Angus Madison, some of you might have read him. He has passed away, unfortunately. Dr. Boy has certainly read him. He has specialized in the measurement and analysis of economic growth and development, and he has documented long periods of economic performance in every country in the world. According to his work, India was the largest economy of the world from 1 AD to 1000 AD. India was the largest. Of course, India in its current form. Over the next 600 years, that is up to 1600 AD, intermittently it fell to second position below China. But in 1700, India had a share of 24.4% of world GDP, and it was the largest in the world. So since then, there has been an inexorable loss of share. But ladies and gentlemen, my humble submission is that the time has come to halt this decline, reverse it, and repossess our rightful position on the world stage. Thank you very much.
So we have a few minutes left before we break for lunch at 1. So maybe there is time enough for 2 or 3 questions. So floor is now open for the audience. Yes, one over there. Yeah, second is there. Can somebody give a mic over there?
I can hear you. Yes. With a democracy, nothing else changes. Maybe it is. Maybe the opposition is going to sort of energize the ruling party to get these challenges out of the way and to get it done. Actually, we have come a long way with opposition, with a pluralistic society and a multi-party system. Agreed, agreed. For instance, I forgot to tell you that those labor charts I showed you, 84% of India's labor is actually in the unorganized sector. It's not counted in labor statistics. But still, we are muddling through. We will muddle through. I'm sure you will agree that we have come a little way and we have a long way to go, but we will get there. Yes. All I have to say is that the government that we have is sent to Delhi by us. So I think we need to change.
Yeah, we have the second question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patra. Now, on the 75th, after listening to your lecture, I have started feeling high, along with you and ready to take that. But, see, I have got 30 years of, 28 years to be very precise. And I have just learned one thing, that change is the constant. Every day we are finding change. But then the last 2.5, 3 years, as you rightly said, COVID, and then now Ukraine, and then now what is happening in China, and then what is happening in the Middle East. Uncertainty has come. So this change with a lot of uncertainty, how it is impacting you as a central bank?
I'm glad you raised this question because in February, when RBI made its monetary policy announcement, I think February 8th, at that time we saw this economy growing at 7.8%, close to 8%, and the inflation rate to climb down to 4.5%, which is a Goldilocks state of affairs in February. In 2 weeks, the world changed. None of us had forecast that there will be a war in Ukraine. Adding to the COVID problems, adding to the supply chain disruptions, etc. So in April, the next policy review, the growth rate we projected fell 60 basis points. And the inflation rate climbed to 5.7% and then 6.7%. So that is the impact of the war. Just take the RBI's projections and you get an assessment of the war's impact. But have you noticed that in the second half of 2022, all economies, the US, UK, every economy, including China, has either contracted or slowed. India's data are not yet available, but RBI has projected that it will grow at 16% in the first quarter of this year, the financial year, April, June. And you will see the growth rate slowing down after that, but that will be what is called base effects. Last year's base, we'll call it. The underlying momentum is 7-8%. So obviously, India is resilient to even the war. I'll give you a small incident of how topsy-turvy the world has become. You know that there are sanctions against people who are buying Russian oil. And this was reported to us by US Treasury. It turns out that an Indian ship, met a Russian tanker in mid-seas, picked up oil in the mid-seas, came to a port in Gujarat, processed it. It was processed in that port, and it was converted into a distillate, which actually goes into making single-use plastic. The refined output was put back on that ship, and it set sail without a destination. In the mid-seas, it received a destination, so it recharted its course, went to New York and landed its stuff. So that's the way the war works. It works in strange ways. And I would say, where the world is facing shortages of food, food security has become an issue in even advanced economies. We have buffer stocks. Wheat is at buffer norms, and rice is at 3 times the buffer norms. So in some ways, we have done the right things. And I forgot to tell you also that the discounted oil has actually built up all our strategic reserves. We have strategic reserves of oil now. So we are better prepared. than many other countries. So we will have to muddle along, but I think it will not be so difficult. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Yeah, that was, in a brief period, the Japanese government, realizing this is happening, started to give incentives for families to be bigger. But it failed. Urbanization, modernization takes its toll. Yes.
Thank you very much for this exciting talk. We all gained from this. But the challenges that you showed, that's very scary actually. So the takeoff that we took with you, now it's the pilot is saying, please fasten your seatbelt, we are going to face rough weather, thing like this. So if I want to ask you, what is one strongest point of India that you would like to flag to overcome these challenges? And what is one worst weakness we have so that we will fail to meet the challenges? These are two things. Another thing I would like to say, that just out of my curiosity, you said somewhere that Indonesia will be the strongest currency in future. What's the reason and why not India? So these are good.
So I'll answer the second question first. It's all about purchasing power parity. I told you that there is this thing about GDP being measured in purchasing power parity terms. Indonesia will overtake India in terms of purchasing power parity, not necessarily in market exchange rate, but it will. No, India will slow down after 48. Indonesia goes on beyond that. Yeah, that's it. And the strongest one is that I think our strong point is we know where we want to be. I think so. But our weakest thing is we need to fashion how to get there. Is that it?
I have
Yes,
one
please.
question.
Microphone.
Yeah, I have one question here.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So my question is, if we'll see the debt to GDP ratio in China, that is much higher than India. So why not India follow the similar kind of route where your debt will be much more, where we can expand our manufacturing as well as export, as China is doing? What are some major issues that India is having to increase the debt to GDP ratio?
Increasing the debt to GDP ratio is the easiest thing in the world. You just have to borrow. But as I mentioned to you, the debt comes with a compulsion, and that you have to service it. If you start servicing higher and higher levels of debt, obviously the amount you have left for investing or for growing new assets will reduce. And eventually, it will kill you. It's called the debt trap. Because you have no money left for investing into your country's future. You're only paying the debt. That is why we have limits on our debt. Not only the external debt, but also the internal debt. We actually exercise limits on that so that we don't allow it to go out of, like for instance, at the current time, if you put together the debt of the center and the state, it is close to 90% of GDP. Very little is left. If out of your income, you're spending, let's say you have 100 rupees and you're spending 90 rupees on paying debt, what have you got to grow? How will you send your children to school? That's the issue.
So I see many hands, but we will take two more questions in the interest of, the first question.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful presentation. So my question is, you just spoke about internationalization. Just I was remembering the OLI theory and also anyway. So my question is that in the internationalization, we have seen that particularly India has come out of many of the trade agreements, including the RCEP and also TPP. So in that context, when the many bilateral multilateral agreements have been taking place, in that context, how do you see India to position itself in the trade negotiations? And second thing is that you are also speaking about, if I talk about the current account deficit. So current account deficit, like we also adopted the procedure of export-oriented strategies, but we somehow failed to succeed in that. So in that context, like, will you also give the importance to the outward API also? In that context, thank you.
Actually, we never adopted an export-oriented strategy. Our strategy till 1990 was import substitution, if you recall. Now, that is an inward-looking strategy. I mentioned that because what happens is that when you cut out the rest of the world, you close your mind to innovations, to new changes, new types of production, etc. So that, I think, was a fundamental mistake. I think everyone realizes that. That's why in 1980 we changed the strategy and became more outward-oriented. Because when you export, it's not just that you send your goods to another country and sell it for another currency. You also express your productivity. You provide a vent for surplus. When you get returns from that, you invest more into that technology. So now we have started. India will never be a fully export-oriented economy. We'll be a more balanced thing. But the government of the day seems to realize that there are levers there. So you can see that Make in India or the production-linked incentive scheme. These are, with the PLI scheme, we became an exporter of smartphones. We were an importer till recently. Okay, so that thing altered the whole, narrative. So I think that we need to focus on export. On your question about outward FDI, in the past, we looked at joint ventures and wholly owned subsidiaries as an outlet for exports. Today, we don't look at them anymore like that. Today, it'll be proper to call our joint ventures and wholly owned subsidiaries not outlets for exports, but as Indian multinational. That's where we are today. It is growing very rapidly. So when in the RBI, we compiled this balance of payments. Earlier, we used to see FDI in India was 45, 50 billion. Now it is less. Not that the inflows have reduced, but outflows have become that much. Outward FDI. So manufacturing in India is finding better expression in other countries. That's the story. I think it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you, sir, for very nice presentation. I have one question, sir. We saw that after some, actually, our economy is kind of self-sustained economy because our investment is being financed by our domestic saving. Also showed that per capita infrastructure investment is very low, $89 here in India. And there is an investment gap of 3.5%. It said that if we achieve a 6% growth rate, then probably can bridge this gap over a period of time. But for an economy which is self-dependent on its own saving to have investment, where can we get this investment when the saving is declining? We also saw saving is declining. From where can we get this investment to bridge this gap?
Nice question. So one thing is, as you realized, we are domestically financed. So all our efforts should go into raising the rate of domestic saving. Because that's what we are good at. We are a high saving society and we need to do that. What do we need for that? We need higher incomes because income is the most important determinant of saving. So we need to raise the level of income fast. And we also need better returns to our saving. For instance, the RBI cut policy rates to an all-time low during the pandemic. Actually, we reduced it to zero because we have a target of 4%. If you minus 4% from the policy rate, it's zero. Okay. What happened? People stopped their saving in banks. The number of premature withdrawals has risen and the number of demat accounts has gone up more than proportionately. So people are shifting. But as long as income rises. So you need to raise incomes fast and you need to provide the proper incentives for people to save.
Don't you think that it's too simplistic a relation that we need to raise the income, that will raise the saving, and ultimately that will translate into investment? How can we raise that income?
No, once you save, what will you do? When you have savings, you'll put it in a bank. After that, you have lost control over your savings. You will get it back 3 years later. But the bank doesn't keep your savings for 3 years. It lends it out as credit. All you have to do is save and go to the bank. Then the rest will take over. Also, we need to really revisit our calculations on the role of foreign savings. At a certain level of income, at a certain level of exports, at a certain level of reserves, maybe 3% was the danger line. As we become a larger and larger economy and more open, with more access to capital markets across the world, maybe 3% can go to 4% or 5%.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. I think the entire audience has enjoyed it. I had a question about international issues. Since that was cast, I'll just flip quickly. I thought I'll ask you to comment on your comments. One is you rightly focused on manufacturing going up to 25%. But reality of India, whatever we try, even in the days of Ambedkar also said that don't romanticize with villages and don't romanticize with agriculture. Urbanization is our ultimate. But reality is 57% rural population, 50% depending on agriculture. I don't know how many years it will take to bring down to this level which is less than 10% depending on agriculture. It may take many years. So in the interregnum, there has to be solid agenda for agriculture. So it has to be agriculture industry mix, and you would appreciate in terms of value addition, we are one of the lowest in agriculture in the world. So why do we position that value added agriculture? We see winds of change in terms of agriculture exports. But should you only be supplying raw material to the rest of the world, just like Odisha does, supply only manpower and minerals? We should be doing that. And how do we position that value addition in agriculture and improve the... We are number one in many items in agriculture, but in terms of productivity, if you see, we are not really that great. Of course, there are areas we are doing wonderful, but there are many areas our productivity much less than the global average. So what could be the agenda for that? Because this is the reality. This is one, if I can add one more question. India 2048, maybe before that will be the largest economy in the world, second or first largest economy. But the India consists of states. So you have any state-specific suggestion for state like Odisha, if you can give it quick response. Thank you.
On the first, I just can't add, and he has been our deputy governor, and internationalization of the rupee was in his backyard. So I can't add. I think he has given us the formula how to break through this Gordian knot and go into true internationalization. This is exactly what we need to do. Add value to agriculture. Position ourselves to send out high technology agriculture items. I think we are already doing some irradiation of onions, etc. in our exports, and that I think is what he alluded to. That is the mix we want. But one thing that I think will change the narrative is this one district, one export scheme, where GI tags are being given for the simplest. I recently went to Lakhimpur Kheri, and there they are taking these banana trees, and from the fiber they are creating such beautiful rugs. I think Prime Minister also mentioned this in his Mann Ki Baat. But that's the way to go, I think. I can't visualize what else needs to be done, but I'm seeing a lot of benefits from this district. Thank you very much.
So friends, we have come to the close of the talk today. Very interesting questions. I now request our team to take the program further.
we thought you would like to sit down and take the questions, but now they're over, so no need.
Sir, deeply honored as all of us to be here to listen to your presentation and your perspective on the growth of the Indian economy for the last 75 years and the prospects and challenges ahead. Sir, as a token of our gratitude and respect, we would like to present a memento. I'd request Dr. S.N. Konda, RD sir, to kindly present that memento. And our sincere apologies, sir, for the technical glitches that interfered with your presentation. I would now request Sri Vishwaj Sarangi, General Manager, to kindly propose a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I deem it a privilege to stand over here to propose a vote of thanks today at the end of today's event. At the outset, we must acknowledge that we have just witnessed a fantastic session. I mean, I'm losing, thinking about the word which can describe the way you have experienced, sir. On a very contemporary and apt topic, as we celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav by none other than our Deputy Governor, sir, Dr. M.D. Patra, sir, who is known for making complex economic concepts very, very simple. And as we have seen it in ample amount today. So thank you very much, sir, and for having taken time out of your busy schedule and consented to deliver the talk today. I think along with you, all of us have become dreamers, as you have very rightly quoted John Lennon today. So once again, thank you very much, sir. I must give a special thanks to our own regional director who actually conceptualized the event and guided it towards its fruition today. So thank you very much, sir. On behalf of RBI family, let me thank all the dignitaries from the state government. I can name Meena sir, Principal Secretary, our CGM from SBI and other senior bankers, and academicians, my colleagues from Reserve Bank of India for having graced the occasion and making it a grand success. We thank members of the electronic and press media for their presence to cover this event and their continued support and cooperation in information dissemination of RBI's perspective on various issues. This has been a very continuous effort, so thank you very much. I must thank our ex-Deputy Governor, sir, also. He has taken his time to be here. Thank you very much, sir. Khan, sir. Last but not the least, I thank all those who worked relentlessly in the background, like so many of our own colleagues from RBI Bhubaneswar, from the Department of Administration, Information Technology, Protocol Security, and Mayfair Hotel for their outstanding hospitality. Vendors without whom this program would not have been as successful as it has been. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you.
I request all guests to kindly join us for lunch.